For 1,000 years, the Byzantine Emperor was seen as God's chosen ruler on earth, an absolute monarch whose word was law. His power was supposed to be total, his authority unquestionable. But what if the daily reality of power was completely different? What if in the glittering heart of the empire, Constantinople, the fate of millions, the stability of the economy, and even the security of the emperor's throne rested in the hands of another man? A man who could bring the city to a standstill. A man whose signature decided if you could even work. A man whose command of the city guard could make or break a dynasty. This is the story of the emperor versus the eparch, and the truth of who really ran the world's greatest city, the man on the golden throne. When you picture the Byzantine Empire, you probably imagine a figure of almost divine authority. You see the emperor, draped in that famous Tyrian purple, sitting on a golden throne. He's the anointed of God, the Basileus Kai autocrator, Tong Romea, the king and autocrat of the Romans. And that image isn't fiction. It was the carefully constructed reality of imperial power for over a millennium. The emperor was, in theory, the absolute ruler. His power was a unique blend of old Roman law and new Christian theology. Creating a position with no equal on earth, he was considered God's man in charge, which made him the supreme head of both the state and the church. This system, often called Caesaropapism, meant the emperor could hire and fire the Patriarch of Constantinople, the most powerful religious figure in the Orthodox world. His will was literally the law. An imperial decree could reshape the entire empire overnight, and no one, not even the Senate, could overrule him. He was the commander-in-chief of the army and navy, controlled the empire's finances, collecting taxes to fund the massive bureaucracy that kept the whole thing running. His authority stretched from Syria to Italy, enforced by a network of governors who answered directly to him. With a single command, he could make a peasant a nobleman or strip a powerful aristocrat of everything he owned. This was the top-down power structure we all learn about, with the emperor sitting at the unshakable peak, accountable only to God. The very city of Constantinople, with its great palace, the Hagia Sophia, and its grand triumphal parades, was designed to reinforce one single idea. The emperor was the center of the Byzantine universe, the father of the city. But down in the sprawling, chaotic streets of the capital, another power was at play. This power was less concerned with divine right and grand strategy, and more focused on the real, messy business of daily life. This was the power of the Eparch of Constantinople. You see, while the emperor ruled the empire, the eparch ran its capital. And in a state where the capital was everything, that was a critical distinction. The position of eparch, or prefect of the city, was second in authority only to the emperor himself within the city walls. He was known, quite literally, as the father of the city, and his job was as huge as it was essential. First, the eparch was in charge of law and order. He commanded the city's security forces, basically. The police had to keep the peace in a metropolis that could swell to well over 500,000 people. He had the power to arrest, imprison, and even exile anyone he thought was a threat. His courts were constantly swamped with citizens seeking justice, making him the most important legal figure for the average person in the city. But his biggest source of power? He had total control over the city's economy. The Eparch's office supervised every single bit of trade and industry. He set the prices for essentials like bread and wine. He certified all weights and measures. And he regulated everything that came in or out of the port. Nothing was bought or sold in the markets of Constantinople without his say-so. This wasn't just some informal arrangement. It was all laid out in an amazing document called the Book of the Eparch. Compiled around the 10th century, this manual had detailed regulations for all the city's trade and craft guilds. There were guilds for everyone: bankers, silk merchants, candle makers, butchers, bakers, you name it. The eparch controlled who could join a guild, the quality of their work, and where they could sell it. For instance, the book had strict rules for silk merchants to prevent spies from stealing the secrets of Byzantine silk-making. It ordered butchers to only sell meat in designated areas for public health. It forced bakers to produce loaves of a specific weight for a fixed price to stop famine and riots. The eparch was the one who made sure the grain dole reached the people, a policy inherited from Rome to keep the city fed and happy. He managed the aqueducts, the sewers, and public works, from repairing the colossal Theodosian walls, to maintaining the city's public squares. Essentially, while the emperor was busy with theology, foreign policy, and distant wars, the eparch was making sure Constantinople didn't collapse into chaos. His power was immediate, practical, and felt by every single resident. And that gave him a kind of influence that was, in many ways, more real than the emperor's. An unpopular imperial tax was one thing, but if the eparch failed to get the grain supply right, you'd have riots in the streets by morning, a dangerous balancing act. So who was really in charge? Is the emperor with his divine right, or the eparch with his hands on every lever of the city's machine? The truth isn't picking one over the other. It's understanding their complex and often tense relationship. The emperor's power was absolute, but it was also abstract. He was the ultimate boss, but he couldn't personally inspect the day's fish catch or argue with the butcher's guild. He completely depended on his administration to get things done, and in Constantinople, the head of that administration was the eparch. Now, don't get me wrong, the eparch worked for the emperor. He was appointed and could be fired on the emperor's whim. His authority was delegated, not his own. The rules he enforced, like those in the Book of the Eparch, were ultimately issued under imperial authority, and he didn't command any legions. His power stopped at the city walls. But this official hierarchy hides a much messier political reality. The emperor needed the eparch. Constantinople wasn't just any city. It was the political, economic, and psychological heart of the empire. Its stability was the empire's stability. A good eparchon who kept the markets full and the people calm was the emperor's best defense against a revolt at home. An incompetent one could be a disaster. Byzantine history is littered with riots in Constantinople that threatened or even overthrew emperors, and they often started over the very things the eparch handled: food shortages or brutal police actions. The eparch served as a brilliant political shield. Public anger that might otherwise be aimed at the emperor could be absorbed by the father of the city. An emperor facing unrest could just fire an unpopular eparch, offering up a convenient scapegoat without damaging his own sacred authority. This gave a successful eparch a strange kind of leverage. He knew the city inside and out, controlled a huge network of influence through the guilds, had his finger on the pulse of the people. While he didn't have an army, his control over the city's food and security gave him immense practical power. An emperor who made an enemy of his eparch risked grinding his own capital to a halt. And in some rare cases, the job was even a stepping stone to the throne. In 1028, where Romanus Argerus married the emperor's daughter and became Emperor Romanus III, it was an exception, for sure, but it shows just how close to the center of power this city manager really was. Ultimately, it was a relationship of mutual dependence. The emperor had the final say the power of life and death, which kept the eparch loyal. But the eparch held the keys to the capital's stability, which kept the emperor on his throne. It was a delicate, dangerous dance between the divine authority of the palace and the gritty, central authority of the streets. The Byzantine Empire is full of these fascinating power struggles hiding just beneath the surface. If you love untangling the complex relationships and forgotten figures of history, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Let us know in the comments. What other historical second-in-command do you think secretly held the real power? The emperor reigns, but the eparch rules. So, to ask who really ruled is to ask the wrong question. The Byzantine emperor was, without a doubt, the supreme ruler of the empire. His authority was total, backed by law and blessed by the church. He decided matters of war, peace, faith, and justice. The Eparch of Constantinople never came close to that level of sovereignty. But if we stop there, we miss the point of how power actually worked. The emperor reigned over the empire, but the eparch ruled Constantinople. And Constantinople was the empire in miniature, its brain, its heart, and its nerve center. The eparch's hands in control of this vital organ gave him a power that was more immediate, and in some ways more critical to the emperor's survival than that of any general. The emperor's power was theoretical and absolute. The eparch's was practical and essential. The true governance of the Byzantine Empire was a mix of these two realities. It was an endless negotiation between the sacred, untouchable authority of the emperor and the messy, hands-on control of the eparch. The emperor may have been the sun, the source of all light. But the Eparch was the force of gravity that kept the capital, the most important planet in the imperial.